confirming the agenda. Councillor Hallahan, Deputy Reeve Campbell, all in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. None noted. Moving to the consent agenda, is there any point that a councillor would like moved forward? Councillor Stewart?
Just a comment. It's on the recreation summer updates 4.2.4. There's a paragraph in there about the refrigeration unit at the Blythe District Community Center. And of course, when things go wrong, it's always at the worst time. And the refrigeration unit in question stopped working during the Huron Pioneer Thrashers and Hobby Association annual show. And I just wish to take this opportunity to express my thanks to the facility manager Dave Cook and his staff for their quick response to address the situation, and also to the affected parties for their patience and cooperation. Everything worked out fine.
Thank you. That's good to know, John. Councillor Vaughn.
I can't resist the temptation to make a spurious comment about the minutes of the September 17 meeting. Point 9.2 at the top of page 11 refers to a session that was held at the AMO conference dealing with spearing on economic development. I know we have to fish around for great ideas for economic development, but I don't think spearing is the way to go. Maybe they meant speaking on economic
Yes.
development, perhaps.
Speaking.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Anything further on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Vaughn. Seconded. Deputy Reeve Campbell. All in favor? Carried. Okay. We're at 6.1.1 already, so soon along. I'll let you introduce the topic.
Good evening, Council. So I have a consent application for you here tonight. So this is consent C56 2018 for the owner Dennis Connolly and the applicant Doug Culvert, and it's at 85413 Scott Line in East Wawanosh, and it's for a surplus residence severance. So the area on the property that's proposed to be severed is approximately 4 acres and is currently zoned agriculture, and it contains an existing dwelling, barn, and 2 sheds. The remainder of the property in the proposed retained farmland is approximately 100 acres and is currently designated agriculture with a portion that's natural environment limited protected. The zoning on the property is AG1 general agriculture, and again that portion NE2 natural environment limited protection for the small amount of bush on the property. Proposed retained land farmlands would be continued to use for agricultural purposes. You can see here the aerial of the subject property with the proposed retained outline in red, and the proposed severed, the 4 acres outlined in red is the severed and green is the retained. This is a close-up on the proposed severed property with the buildings. You can see it comes in and includes the laneway and some of the trees there. The application as submitted was reviewed against the applicable North Huron policies and the official plan, as well as the provincial policy statement, and it was found to meet the criteria for a surplus severance, a surplus resident severance in the North Huron official plan. The owner does own another property and farm in Huron County with the building built over 15 years ago, and there's no barns remaining on the retained farmland with no previous separation of land for residential purposes. And the retained lands do meet the minimum size for retained farmland. Comments received during the circulation of the application were received from the Huron County Health Unit, indicating they had no objections to the proposed severance and recommending that a condition was included that the existing septic system was inspected, and a letter was received from the licensed contractor advising that the tank was in good condition and functioning properly. No comments were received from members of the public during the circulation. And the last set of comments were received from Kirk Livingston, the chief building official, with the recommendations for the existing barn on the proposed severed lands. with the options presented as either keeping the barn as it exists on the proposed severed lands and applying for a change of use permits to the only storage building. The existing barn would be going with the farmlands instead of the proposed severed house, or that the barn was demolished as a condition of the severance. The property, as I mentioned, is zoned agriculture, AG1 and natural environment. As a condition of the severance, it would automatically be rezoned with the severed portion being rezoned to AG4-9, and the retained farmlands would be automatically rezoned to AG2. So it is recommended for approval with the conditions that are included in the report. So here's a photo of the proposed severed area. And you can see the barn in the existing house with a portion of one of the sheds. And that's a photo of the existing barn. I'd be happy to answer any questions that council had about my report or any of the conditions included in it.
So the recommendation for taking,
Go ahead.
sorry, taking the barn down. That came from building inspector. Lisa, yeah.
Yes, so Kirk said that he recommended one of the three options, as I mentioned, keeping it and modifying it, keeping it with the farmland instead of the house, or demolishing it. And he further discussed those options with the applicant, and they submitted a letter that they were agreeable to demolishing the barn. So that's the recommended condition. So it is, council is able to recommend conditions to Huron County as part of the planning process that they can include with the severance.
Councillor Hallahan?
You need a motion?
Yep.
Motion.
Deputy Reed Campbell seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Council.
Thank you, Laura. Do we have to do a second motion on that or not?
There's no bylaw with that.
Okay. Okay, 6.2.1, section 357, we will have Donna go forward explaining that.
Okay, thank you, Reed. So we had two applications under section 357 of the Municipal Act. One was fairly simple. It was a demolition regarding a barn that was damaged in a windstorm and it wasn't worth fixing. And so that was a very small tax refund amount. I note that neither of the applicants are in the audience this evening, so if they were here, then we could ask them to speak to their application. I have recommended that both applications be approved, however. So the second one is a little bit more complicated. It regards the Westfield Fellowship Hour Church. So as part of cleaning up an estate, this property had been donated to the church quite some time ago. And there was a problem at the land titles office, which caused the church to change ownership, and then therefore MPAC reassessed the property from exempt, which the church would have had, to taxable. So as you can see, this has taken since late 2015 to get this matter cleared up finally through between both the land titles and MPAC. So they are entitled to a tax refund, and so they have worked with Impact and worked all the way through the process. So I am definitely recommending that that one be approved as well. So are there any further questions on either of those applications?
Oh, Councillor Slate,
I have no
you're
questions, but I'll move it.
moving. Approval, Councillor Vauden seconding. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried, thank you. Thank you, Donna. Okay, we get to 6.2.2. Donna again.
Okay, thank you very much. So last meeting, I appreciate the good discussion that we had on a draft of our procurement policy. It's been a lot of work in the making to get our policy updated. And we had a few small changes arising from that meeting. So I'll just go over those quickly. At the meeting, council had agreed to increase the single sole purchase level requiring council approval from 2,500 up to 10,000. In section 22, that paragraph, it identifies special circumstances where the CAO could authorize emergency purchases. But we had talked about that night to change it to say that purchases over 50,000 would require council approval. So as I noted, that would probably require a special council meeting. But if there was some emergency in that nature, we'd probably be having a special council meeting anyway. So that was a difference there. So that's been added in to require council approval. Under the Municipal Act, the procurement policy, local boards are also obligated to have a procurement policy. So I just added the section under the Act, section 272 addresses local boards. So that's just some wording that's been added in. And finally, two other items on the exemption list. We're working on a separate investing policy anyway. But two items that the county has on their exemption list is the rental, lease, or purchase of land and borrowing or investing of money. So those two things would be brought to council anyway, but they would not go through a competitive process. So this is purchasing land, not selling land. So those are the few minor changes to the policy. And I had included a bylaw and the updated version of the policy in the bylaw section. So does council have any further comments on the report before we adopt the report and move it down into the bylaw section at the appropriate time?
It doesn't look like it, so. Oh,
I would move the report.
okay, and Councillor Ritzman seconding. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Donna. Moving to 6.4.1, House and Dam Working Group, and Sean will update us on some background work he's done on that for the working group.
Yes, thank you, Reeve Vincent. As council will likely recall, at the July 23rd meeting, there was a resolution passed, and at that point in time, staff was directed to prepare the report that you have before you now. And the purpose of this report is to make some suggestions and recommendations surrounding the structure and function of a committee designed to look at the house and dam issue and problems and consider various solutions. It was suggested that this committee might be of value because of the significant financial and societal impact surrounding the dam and particularly its place in the town of Wingham. We looked at some other models, one in particular, and from there kind of built this up. And the whole process started with how we would suggest establishing the composition of the working group. And it was, staff thought it was important that we get input from basically all facets of North Huron residential structure. I guess I don't know if that sentence is terribly complete, but so in the end, we looked at a structure that would basically be call it a working group or committee of council that would consist of 7 members. The suggestion was that that would include 1 residential ratepayer from each of the 3 wards, Wingham, Blythe, and EW, 1 business or commercial representative from Wingham, 1 business or commercial representative from Blythe, from EW, either a business, commercial, or agricultural representative, and then 1 chair elected out of members of council that would oversee and chair the group. And the thinking was that really you would get all different thought processes and positions on the dam. Now, it was important to note that At this point in time, we're looking at the dam as a non-area rated asset. If it became area rated, then this structure doesn't work, because really it's critical that the people on the committee are people that, I'll use the term, have skin in the game. You know, these are people that will be affected and impacted by any decision surrounding the dam. So again, if it got to the point where it became an area rated asset, that changes things entirely. Now, as far as the mandate of the committee, we thought that we would break it out into basically 4 phases, bearing in mind that these are suggestions and recommendations. Phase 1 is a really important one, and at that point it would be, call it a fact-finding exercise, where the committee would start out with a full review of all the available documentation. As council's seen, there is a lot of information. There's a lot of engineering reports and data that's been collected surrounding the dam. So we start with that, or the committee starts with that. At that point, there's a number of other resources that can be drawn on. Consultation with other communities that have found themselves in similar situations. Search out and contact dam advocacy groups, and then meet with that people from that position, so you can kind of get a sense of where they're coming from. And then you start drawing from some of the resources. You've got, as I mentioned, pro-dam advocacy groups. You've got the Ministry of Natural Resources. They have representatives that we could get on site to speak to it. You've got representatives from BM Ross that are very familiar with the dam, KGS Group, GSS Engineering, Maitland Valley Conservation Authority, and of course, everybody's already met with the ORA, but bring them in to meet with the committee as well. At that point, you've got this working group, this committee has collected probably enough information to be almost overloaded. They know, they've looked at it from all sorts of different perspectives. Then you would move into a plan development stage. And I think this could migrate based on the direction that the group is starting to take. But, you know, they start looking at a preferred course of action based on all the information, determining estimated costing models, looking at an implementation time frame, and then starting to get some thought and discussion around a public consultation plan as to how they would deliver that. Phase 3 then is very important, and that becomes the council report. That's the opportunity for this committee to come before council with a well-crafted report to basically outline the journey to that point and where they think this the community might look at going with the dam. That allows council, of course, to make a decision, and then depending on the outcome of the direction of council, you get into project work. And the one thing that I didn't mention is we saw this committee and this working group as having staff representatives as well. So it would be a committee of council. So minutes are going to be taken. There's going to be public meetings, notice given on meetings. We saw a recording secretary, and then in all probability myself as an operational support person, just to be certainly not voting, not inputting, but available to assist as called upon. And then, as I was saying, phase 4 then puts us into, puts the committee into more of the boots on the ground stage, where they might be looking at the planning process for public engagement, looking for funding sources, monitoring the implementation plan and timeline that they've at that point handed to staff, and then providing ongoing meetings and status reports to council. So that being said, if that was the desire of council, then one of the challenges becomes recruitment. And we thought in order to be seen as open, it would be good to not only put the call out, but require anybody who's interested in applying to sit on this working group, have them answer 3 simple questions. The response to those questions then in their application would be vetted or sort of reviewed and shortlisted by, and we were suggesting a third-party engineering firm. So then it's very transparent, it's very open. And we thought the questions might be, as an example, what information would you like to be brought to the table in order to understand the issues associated with the project? That in and of itself would give us opportunity to see how broad the applicants were thinking. What do they want to hear about the dam while they formulate their picture or their ideas. The next question would be, what do you see as the benefit in utilizing the committee structure to work through the project? I think that could be a very interesting question, and some of the responses might be enlightening and help an engineering firm to really decide or to find people that were looking to work on that committee structure. And then finally, are there any direct monetary benefits to you or your immediate family that you're aware of that might preclude you from involvement in this working group? And again, the whole idea that we would be entering into this, everybody has preconceived ideas, but that the people are looking for fact and they're looking to really understand in great detail the issues. So again, all of these applications submitted to a third party, we suggested an engineering firm because I think that would give us a really good, well-rounded approach to shortlisting. Now, as we move through the whole idea, there certainly would be some financial impact. We've in the list of people that we would call in, there's engineering firms, there's a number of companies and organizations that might incur some costs. So the thinking was that this would be a 2019 budget consideration, and our estimate at this point is that it would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of, we'll say, $10,000 all told to bring these different firms in. If you're bringing an individual firm or two in for one night, there's definitely going to be costs associated. So, and basically that was where we ended up when we looked at trying to assemble this or paint that picture. Is this cast in stone? And absolutely certainly not, but the thinking was that it might be a solid starting point. And if we did find ourselves in a position where a committee was pulled together, certainly they're going to look at this and they may definitely want to change some of the mandate or have some discussion around who they want to see this. So there would have to be some inherent flexibility built into the process.
Okay, that I am probably going to leave the chair to talk to this report. Start with Councillor Wadden. I'll let councillors speak first.
It seems to me that there is another possibility in a sense that it's separate from this set of procedures that you have written here, but it could obviate the whole thing. And what I'm referring to is an angel coming out of the sky somewhere with all the money and all of the plan, everything there, a group or some resource that would answer all the questions, all the financial questions, the cost and everything. I think that if it's going to be looked at strictly as a matter of what the council can do with public funding and with maybe some donations, it's never going to happen. We could go through all of this work and end up with nothing. But I think it seems to me that while this plan is fine and I think we should consider it, but I think we should also open the possibility of somebody coming up with a plan funded and laid out in detail that could answer the whole thing. And that would change the whole complexion of the discussion on both sides of the argument.
Councillor Syed?
So I've been a very vocal proponent for this committee for a number of reasons. However, I'm not exactly on board with how we look at these phases. And the reason I'm thinking is because it to me looks like we're going to be redoing the same work that has already been done. The question I have is can materials be presented to this committee based on what is already being provided, and they vet and prepare a report and have a vocal discussion, pros and cons and issues and concerns about how this social impact or financial impact is going to impact them, without going through the whole idea of calling all these engineering groups again to voice what they've already written on paper. My concern has always been, we want all the people that have the stakeholders in it to have some discussion about what they want. And not necessarily going through the whole RAM again, but we've got lots of data, lots of information, lots of material. Have that committee group do the same thing that this council has been doing, is read it, understand it, absorb it, and then come back with their recommendation is if it was different than ours. Because that, to me, is transparent to the ratepayers of this municipality. I don't think redoing the work and having this committee doing that work again is just cause to the municipality at all. I think they're gonna come up, the reports are just gonna be regurgitated in a different way, put another spin on them, put an invoice beside it, and that's the problem. And it's, they told us what they wanna tell us. And I just want to make sure that the committee understands what their mandate is. Their mandate should be to provide a recommendation to what they believe is in the best interest of the municipality. And if that's different than council's thought, then we need to talk about it. Not just take the recommendation as it is or deny it. We have to talk about these things as opposed to just letting these committees go ahead and think they're going to get carte blanche. I think that's the concern I have based on the way this working group is set up today. I don't see value here. I see value if the discussion was had. And I'm talking about, you get them in the committee, you get them in a month you give them all the information and say, here's a couple of months, come back with a report, and then let's talk about it. That to me is value. Redoing the reports isn't value to me. And that's just my opinion based on how I'm seeing it. And I'm not saying this is wrong. I just think we're just going to be spinning an engineering wheel again, which we've got thousands of reports and thousands of data that we can read. So that aren't going to change.
Councillor Stewart?
Just to, I guess I'm thinking out loud on this, but the composition of the committee, and I understand the premise of having equal representation between the three wards, but I know that there's different groups in the Wingham ward with different ideas. I'm just wondering if the way this is set up, if they're going to have, if those different ideas are going to have a separate voice here, or if it's going to appear as if they have a voice. Again, I'm not sure I have an answer to it. That's more of a question I'm just throwing out there. With the same representation from the Wingham ward as Blythe and East Walnosh, is that the best way to go forward with this? Just throw that out as a comment or a question with no answer.
Councillor Vodden?
Just responding to Councillor Stewart's comments, it seems to me there are two distinct ways of looking at a development like this. We can look at the dam and that whole development as a benefit to the whole municipality. And I think a similar example is the Blythe Memorial Hall, where we put a lot of effort and work, right? And it's really an asset. It's in Blythe, but it benefits the whole municipality. Whereas other benefits may be strictly a local thing for the town of Wingham or for East Walnut or whatever. So I mean, it could be couched in any way, in either way. But I agree with John. We're looking at it from the standpoint of what it's going to do for the Wingham area, then there should be more representation probably from Wingham. Depends on what framework we're holding up.
Councillor Site.
So I guess my question is that whether you have a whether you are at the table or not, you have representation from the person who is there. So, if I'm a member of that committee and I'm a ratepayer in Wingham, the committee is going to be well known about who is on the committee and what the discussion is going to be, should be. There's your time to sit down with that person that says, you've got a vested interest in this thing and you want to see it go how you want to see it. That's the person you need to talk to get because again, if it's a public meeting and it's going to be a committee of council, they're not going to have the ability to be a public session unless the committee makes a motion to make that happen. So the obligation is that I don't think that I agree with the composition only because you have to have the skin in the game and you've got to be a stakeholder in this. Like if Wingham had more composition than the other ones, what really they could honestly impact Blythe and East Wallanosh rate taxes. And is that fair? And it's the same discussion about I hate to bring it up, it's the same discussion about where we heard about with the police. It's the same conversation. So that's the part that I think the representation is correct. The fact that if it's not area rated, it's going to impact everybody's taxes if there's a big financial burden put onto that dam. I think all ratepayers need to understand that and need to have a vested interest in it, for or against. But here's your voice and here's your person to talk to if you've got, or send a delegation or do everything. Like, they have the same ability to do everything in a council meeting that they have here. So that committee can work for it or against it, but it has to get all the information. And I think, in my mind, it's the right composition, but it's also the right people, because they're there and they should be there. If they want to be there, they should have vested interest in the job.
Councillor Hallahan.
The question is, where in this would the decision be made whether it's area rated or not?
At this council table.
How much of the process do we go through before that decision is made, or do we go through all the discussion? Or is that one of the things that start off?
It's one of the points that I want to try addressing.
Sure. Okay, go ahead.
Later. And I'll let other councillors speak first if they want. Is there anything from other councillors? First, I'll say that it's a good report, but in what I have received from people in Blythe, people in East Wallanosh, it is not a mandated service. People in Wingham want it. I have not came across anybody in East Wallanosh or Blythe yet that wants to be part of paying for it. In saying that, I do not believe it should be over the whole township. I believe the proper process is that it should be the ones that want it have a lot bigger say in putting the case forward for it. Allow them, people, that are for it. They can bring all the pro information they want together. The ones that question it and question anything else, I want them to bring all the information that they want so that when that information and a possible recommendation comes to council, I'm not saying that they have to come to a consensus for a recommendation. But I believe the information that can possibly be brought forward by those that are, I'll say, more intimately involved, and to date, it is only the Wingham Ward people that I have heard speaking strongly in favor of needing it, and that it is a Wingham situation. It is not necessarily a North Huron situation. For that reason, I think that we may get people out of East Wallinash and Blythe that are willing to put their name on it, but they have not spoken out already about it. I think some of the ones that are for and against, have them bring all the information together, see if there's some play back and forth between the pro and con to see if that committee, and I honestly feel that you would have a far more diligent committee out of the Wingham Ward. And that's saying that if it was on a plebiscite, I think 2 wards might be against it because it is not a service or a situation that is mandated that council take care of. And that I think we may, doing the equal between wards, I think is a good way. But the history in the area, I'm not sure that you'd have all the best people that for and against on the committee. And I think there's a number in Wingham are on one side or the other. And I think we would have a better committee report from them if we could have them work through the pros and cons. Thank you.
Okay, a rebate from, rebuttal from this one? Yeah. Neil is it, okay, go ahead, Trevor.
I don't disagree with Vincent's comments about it seems to be a Wingham discussion, because it has been a Wingham discussion. The concern is, I have been a very big proponent about in this council of we not talk about it as Wingham, Blythe, and Wallinash, North Huron. And I understand there's things that each, sorry, I apologize. There is certain things that each of the communities want. And I get that. But we all have to understand we're all in the same boat. We all pay the taxes to one group, and we figure out what services we want and we don't want. The issue with the committee, in my mind, was to get that discussion at that table about the pros and the cons, about the taxation or no taxation, or whatever the case may be. Get the people who want it on that committee, get the people who don't want it on that committee, and let them have a discussion about what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of having it. And see if they can come to some resolution that can be suitable for a recommendation. The problem is right now is I understand East Wallinash and Blythe don't want it and they don't see any value to them, and it's not a service. However, That infrastructure's been there for 100 years. It's owned by the municipality. We have to figure it out. So it's no different than the Blythe Hall. Blythe Community Hall, we had to figure that out too. And we got the angel that came with the money and the support. The problem is I don't see an angel coming with this kind of money for that structure. So the fact is it is an asset in the municipality that the entire municipality is going to have to pay for unless there can be somehow discussion about area rating, which, if you want to talk about area rating, then we're going to be talking about everything, every facility, everything is going to be area rated. And then you're right back to square one again about pre-amalgamation. And I don't think that's where we want to be. We're better together than we are apart.
I don't know.
So, well, and that's a fair comment. That's a fair comment. There is people obviously that think there isn't. I do not. I'm a proponent that we are better together than we are separate. So we need to figure it out. But I think this committee needs to talk about it. And because we as council have not had anybody at that lectern saying they don't want it. We get emails, but I've had very little. I've had lots of communication from the people up there saying how they want it and what they want it and why they want it, but very little have we had people to come in and say why they don't want it from East Montreal, Blythe, or even Wing. There's lots of discussion by email and that, but that's not always public. They need to voice that too. So that's why I think the discussion about area rating and the committee, that's where the conversation needs to happen, because the information's there. It's there. They all need to talk about it. But we need to also talk about it too.
Brock?
I'd like to share a quote with you. This is going back many years, long before I was on council. I won't say where it came from, but the quote was this: "There's a difference between people in Williams and people in Blythe. People in Blythe, when they have a great idea for something to develop, they tend to come to council and they say, we've got a plan, we've raised part of the money, but we need a little help to get it finished. Groups from Wingham come to council and say, we've got this great idea, we want you to pay for it." And that was an observation from a knowledgeable person, and it may be playing out in part of our discussion here tonight.
Okay, Neil?
Thank you. And I believe a number of people heard the lady from the Rivers Alliance make comments. A lot of people agreed with her comments. The one thing I'll say, if we were talking residential assessment, but as a farmer, my assessment is going up 16% year over year. So every 5 years, if there's no change, and it really isn't MPAC's fault, it's our federal government believing that any foreign money coming in to buy farmland, raising the value, is good for the country because it's more money throwing through for gross domestic production, and that where residential in Huron County, the average on residential, it's going up just under 3% a year. For the farmland that is used to grow crops, it is a very necessary article. But there is, unless the county passes a possible reduction from the 25% agricultural rate, many of the pieces of farmland are paying 0.25% or 1/4 of what they make per acre in municipal taxes right now. Another 5 years, that'll be 50%. An example, everybody knows what our taxes went up this year. My daughter has 197 acres in East Wawanosh. It's a good thing because of that farmland rate. For the house that she lives in, Morris Turnberry, her taxes went down 200 on it in actual dollars, and ours keep going up. So that is one of the things that I see the residents of East Wawanosh, yeah, if they're catch so much of a bill for something, if nothing changes, they'll be paying twice as much on the land that they need for their livelihood and job, and the buildings that they need for their livelihood and job. And it will be the straw that breaks the camel's back if we keep that continuing, because Canadian agriculture has been always the buffer for our national economy. Good years and bad, there were still crops growing. If we can't come to getting a return on investment on our agricultural land, we will have a country that is steadily going downhill.
Okay.
I just wanted to make comment to what Brock had said earlier about the quote about the difference between Blythe and Lingham. And I want to point out that that's not always true. When it came to the Town Hall Theatre Committee, they did not come to council and ask for money. They came and said, we have a plan, and they raised all of the money on their own without asking for council money. And so I think that when we look at the House and Dam, this is a group that feels it's a very important piece of infrastructure in our community. And if they want to see it rebuilt or refurbished, that they may have to come alongside council and the municipality in order to access some grants or other kind of funding that they wouldn't be able to do on their own. And in that sense, they're asking for our help. But I think the majority of the money that they're going to want to raise or do it should come from private citizens or companies. It should not come from the overall tax burden. But like Trevor said, we need to stop thinking about 3 separate places and be all as one and looking at it that way. So I think that this working group is a good idea, and there should be representation from all the different wards in order to move forward with it.
Any other discussion? Neil?
If I may, thank you, Mr. Chair, that I am not against the project. I'm against tax dollars being used for a non-essential service. That if we can find the angel, glory be. Any further discussion before we have a motion? Yes or no? Councilor Sykes.
Well, I guess the question is, based on the conversation, I guess, is it consensus of council that the composition is okay, and that what that committee physically does and how it goes about its job could be a discussion at, like, when it is actually put together? Because what I'm hearing is, at least from my perspective, what this report is, even though yes, it's an excellent report, I'm not in favor about the phase approach, but I'm not sure if the council is or if they aren't. I don't know. I just don't want to I just don't know what the motion is. If the motion is gonna be this, and then if we turn it down, does the committee not happen at all? That's the concern I have, if we're not clear here.
If I may, I'll go to Sean.
Thank you, Reeve. I might be able to answer some of that, Councillor Sype. I think the idea, again, this was in response to instruction to staff. And I think given where we are on the calendar, the value that I personally saw in this is the whole idea of keeping the conversation going, having the discussion, putting this kind of right on the front burner so that people are working through it. But when you look at the, excuse me, the recommendation, based on the calendar and the fact that any committee of council only exists for as long as the council that appointed it, I don't believe that it's realistically possible to get this, to go through the process and put this thing together only to say, we made it, we're done, and then start over. But, you know, now there's been a lot of conversation, and from my perspective, you know, we've got to keep the house and dam discussion moving. So the recommendation, of course, is to, having said all of this, to move this forward to the next council in hopes to keep that momentum. And that being said, again, this was supposed to be kind of a building block, you know. As you had mentioned earlier, and I think it's important that I respond. If the committee went through all the documentation, looks at it, and says, hey, it's crystal clear, we understand it, they would very quickly, I think, say, let's not spend taxpayers' dollars to hear from KGS or something like that. The reason that kind of structure was put there is some of the reports are brutally technical. You know, they may look at them and say, okay, the 1983-84 stuff was very straightforward, cut and dry, black and white. The later stuff got a little convoluted, and they may say, you know what, we don't need to hear from these guys, but we would like some more information on that. Just the whole idea was to lay out some flexibility in the structure.
Deputy Reeve Campbell.
I think we're going to be hard pressed here to get residents from either Blythe or East Walnut in a neutral position. And if you're going to sit on this committee, you have to have a neutral position. And I don't think we will get them from East Walnut and Blythe. When I campaigned 4 years ago, that was part of my campaign, and there was only one resident that was in favor of it. And the only thing he wanted was the bridge, because he belonged to a bike club here in Wingham, and that was their only way out. That's all he wanted it for. But as far as him, and I questioned him on it, I said, well, how about if you have to pay something towards this? Because I said, I haven't found anybody yet that wants to pay towards this from East Walnut and Blythe. Again, I think the Reeve has said that because of taxes, and I have a neighbor just down the road that's very near to being bankrupt right now. And taxes is part of one of those issues that he's really struggling with right now. So I don't know whether you can get, and if you're going to sit on the committee, you have to come into the committee as neutral. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure you can.
Councillor Sype.
I honestly don't think you're gonna find anybody to be neutral. You're either gonna be for it or you're gonna be against it. There's no sitting on the fence. But the people that are in that room need to talk about it because it affects them all. They're not, you're like, I understand exactly what you're saying, Deputy Reeve, but you're not gonna get somebody from Wingham who's gonna be neutral in that discussion either. The minute you talk about taxes, neutrality goes out the wall. Like, the discussion's over. The minute you talk about taxes, you're either for it or you're against it. So you might as well have the discussion. Because if that's the case, then what are we even doing with the committee? Because we can have that discussion. But my argument has always been the transparency with the ratepayers to let them have a place to have the discussion, for or against it, or whatever the case may be. That's the part. So I will make the motion to move it on, to carry on the committee for the discussion for council, the next council, based on the recommendation here. Obviously, they're gonna have their own mandate.
Following composition.
Following composition, same thing, as it's written, and then my only concern was the mandate part, and that can be dealt with through the other council at that time, so I'm fine with making the motion as it reads.
I'll second that.
Okay,
I request a recorded vote.
okay. Councillor Hallahan,
Read the motion, please, Kim.
That the council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the report of the Director of Public Works dated September 17th, 2018, regarding the establishment of a house and dam working group for information. And further, that staff present this report to the next term of council for consideration as soon as practicable in 2019. Deputy Mayor Campbell.
I am really torn on this, I really am, because I think we've looked at it long enough to, I'm gonna be against it.
Councillor Hallahan.
No.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Ritzman. Tinga.
Yes.
Councillor Syke.
Yes.
Councillor Bauden.
No.
Reed Vincent.
no. Motion fails. Councillor Syke,
So I would ask this council, what are we telling the citizens of North Huron about that piece of infrastructure that has been on the docket for 2.5 years? Are we leaving it for another council to talk about, or obviously there's nothing in the budgets or anything, but we have to communicate something, in my mind.
do you want me to leave the chair, or that I see that we look at it for the composition? And I think we need the ones that are for it and the ones that are against it. We have to put together some type of mechanism that they can, in a civil manner, put forward all the information they can put together. The reports and the engineering reports are all available. Either side can use them for whichever points they want to pull out of them. But we allow them the flexibility. If there's other information they can bring in, other points that are pertinent. Maybe we should have asked a year ago to have the house and dam in the election as a plebiscite, those for and against. But we didn't do that then. I think that there's enough people that are having problems with taxes. I'm certainly willing to work if there's one doing something, whatever with it. But there has to be a group there leading the charge as to for or against, and it will come back to the council to make the decision. It's one of those things. Maitland Valley said, yeah, the 3 other dams that they own, that they are having problems figuring out how to finance any work on them or around them. I think having a committee with both pro and con on it, I'll say moderated, to bring all the information forward in logical form is a very good idea. And I think that could start far quicker if we had a procedure for that to happen with, I'll say, a moderator and 2 or 3 that are strongly in favor, and those 2 or 3 that are not in favor of proceeding with it. Councillor Wadden?
Through this discussion, I've come to the conclusion that it should not be initiated by council. I don't think this is starting out as a council situation. What we should have is a group of committee supporters of the idea put together a viable plan, which we've never received from any group, a comprehensive plan as to what is to be achieved, what are the goals, what are the purposes, and what are the costs, and how are the costs going to be collected and presented. And then if that seems like a viable proposal, then perhaps we form a committee of council to help them enact this where they need permissions of council and so on. But I think the initiative should come from the proponents of it, and they should be the ones that start it off and get it moving, if it's ever going to move.
Councillor Hallahan?
I agree with Reed Vince and what you said there too. And I think in all fairness that for this council to make a decision on this with 4 new councillors we know are going to be on the next council, in all fairness to the damn people and to the new council that's coming in, I think it should be left to them to make some of these decisions. And maybe have all new councillors have different ideas than what we have. So I think it should be left.
Okay. That we've had comments made. The printed motion failed. Does anybody have the basis of a motion on moving forward from this stage? Or is that something that we need to think about? But I'm not happy putting it on the shelf. I think one's working on pro and con. We should have some form of allowing them to move ahead in an organized manner. Councillor Sype?
All of the documents that are prepared in that are of public record. They're of public record.
Yes.
The dam committee has them. The people who are against the dam can ask for the same documents.
Yes.
My question is, if that is what this council believes would be in the best interest, then does it not make sense that let the other council have it, discuss it? If that's what they decide, in my mind, it's here's the date. Here's the date you come with your proposal. And this is the date we're gonna take that information and and that council will make a decision based on that information. If only the House and Dam Committee comes with their proposal, well, then that's what it comes.
Okay.
We still have to make the decision in the best interest. Even if they said, yeah, the recommendation is to spend the $6 million, well, we don't necessarily nobody has to make that motion to continue. But I don't think there's gonna be a debate. The debate has to happen at this table. Because we are ultimately responsible to make the call about where taxpayer money is going to be funded. So, that's the delegation stuff that I think I'm waiting for.
Okay.
Is give me the delegation or give me that where you're adamantly against it and here's why and here's all the things you want to do with that you could do without that. And how it's gonna look and whatever the case may be. But to me, that's another council thing. And I think that's where I think that has, but I don't see a proposal or a composition that has for and against sit in a room. Because I know it's gonna be staring at each other and that's about it. And it's gonna go right to taxes. So that's the conversation. So at the end of the day, I just think my conversation was we need to communicate something about whether the process is gonna continue or we're deferring it to the next council for this report to come back to them to talk about what they want. I'm fine either way. I just think communication is key because this is dragged on and on and on. And I'm okay with the fact that we've pushed back to the community because we want to make the right decision. I'm not against that, but we need to move this forward. And I think the next council needs to decide very early where they sit on the House and Dam.
Yeah, okay.
So if you need a motion, Reeve, I'll make a motion to defer it to the next council.
I would ask you to make a friendly amendment
Okay.
that the next council work on this very early in their term.
Sure, I'll make that motion.
And you're seconding, Councillor Hella?
Yes.
Any further discussion? Deputy Reeve Campbell?
That's not just a plateful that we're handing to the new council. That's the whole roasting pan right there.
But we're not gonna sit here beyond that.
We're not gonna have to worry about that.
No, I mean, it's in all fairness, we can't make their decisions.
I think it has to be made. I think that's what we have to do. And I know there was a motion made a couple of council meetings ago to the dam committee that if they wanted to build the dam, they had to raise all the money for it. And that motion passed. I know the motion can be rescinded, but that motion is on the books. I think Yolanda seconded that motion at that night, that we made that motion. But I don't think I really don't think it should be on the tax dollars and the taxpayers' plate to pay for it. That is my biggest problem.
Okay, Councillor Stewart.
I would second Councillor Sipes' motion and yeah, I think it's up to the next council with that motion to decide how they want to do it. And if they decide something totally different than what we've talked about tonight,
They've made a
they've
decision.
made the decision. I hate passing things on, but in this case, I just don't see how we can come to any type of agreement or conclusion on the matter in the short term.
Thank you.
I just noticed one of the councilors over there just said thanks. Well, that's running for council, just said thanks.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Okay. We'll give you an easier topic, Sean. Cemetery software procurement.
Thank you, Reeve Vincent. Let's look at a fairly straightforward procurement exercise. As council's aware, we had discussed at the budget stage that we were in need of cemetery management software. The existing system is a combination of cardstock and 3-ring binders and maps, hand-drawn maps. So we went out to tender, we went out with an RFP for this one. The reason we went with an RFP is we figured there was probably a number of different options, for one. And for two, we had a few concerns surrounding data entry. We've got cardstock and data probably in the thousands in cabinets in the back. So we put the RFP out, and we were asking for two things. We were asking for the software, and we were asking for a price for implementation of or importing of all of our data into it. Because it was an RFP, there was an evaluation matrix that was put together, and it wasn't driven solely on price for obvious reasons. We needed to understand that this very valuable asset was going to be properly protected. So the submissions were to be evaluated by a committee based on intuitive nature of the interface that they were offering, experience and history of the firm with similar contracts. We wanted to make sure that we were into software supported by a firm that had some experience. We didn't want to get into being the first or second of the client base. Price was definitely looked at. Technical support system was important. Annual licensing fees, as everybody knows, when you buy software, you're in it for the long haul. And then the implementation plan and timeline. We had a little bit of interest. In the end, we had two firms that bid. One was a company called, or an offering called Momentum Cemetery Management Systems by Clover Point Plus Systems. This firm asked a lot of questions. They bid a product that wasn't exactly what we were looking for. It was cloud-based versus network-based. Our preference would have been something that actually resided on the server. They did not have an extensive amount of experience in cemetery software. They were a mapping and GIS company that kind of morphed into cemetery. There was a couple of things that they did that we thought were a little unusual, particularly how they handled niche walls and that sort of thing. All that to say, their total price for the service came in, the software itself was $60,000, $6,000 a year for licensing fees, site training at $4,000, and then they had a very non-committal response in terms of importing the data with a starting price of $40,000, which brought the price to $110,000. As council probably remembers, we had $50,000 in the budget for the software. Stone Orchard was the second one. Now, Stone Orchard was interesting to us because it's owned by Aptian, which also owns now Keystone. So we knew there was some compatibility in terms of the product. And I had dealt with the company in a previous location because they also produce WorkTech, which is a workplace management software piece. Their pricing came in at $31,700 for the software, $5,600 for the annual licensing fees, and then an implementation cost to pull all that data in at $66,979. Brought their price to $104,279. So price notwithstanding, we did sit as a committee, and the committee included Barb, Kevin, Dunn, Kenzie, and myself. Looked at the offerings based on everything except the data entry. And it was, we were all unanimously in favor of Stone Orchard. They had a lot of experience. There's a lot of local municipalities that are using it. There was some familiarity with the platform. So then we narrowed it down and said if we were going to do this, we were interested in Stone Orchard. At $31,700, that left me with approximately $12,000 to work with. And I wasn't convinced that that was enough to actually import all the data. There's a tremendous amount until I became aware of the online resources that are available to us. I had a talk with Mr. Kyvenhoven, who was instrumental in in putting this out there. We took snapshots of the data, which he provided, sent it to Stone Orchard and said, can you use this? They came back and said, yes, absolutely. The online data has the name, in most cases, the interment date. Most importantly, it has the coordinates. Because it had that data, basically Stone Orchard could draw it all in and give us a start point. So we knew who was interred at the sites and where they were. Fantastic. That gives us a good start. Really, then all we were looking at is data checking to take the card stock, compare it to what was online, add to it, so make sure the interment dates and some other particular data was in there, and then populate the interment right holder's certificate. So there's a lot of people that have bought property. They're not using it yet. That's key to the whole thing. So at this point now, we realize that we've got a pretty solid base to work with. $12,000 starts becoming a viable number to actually bring someone in on a contract, perhaps somebody, from rec department or someone who's working part-time, bring them in on a contract basis to populate the data. And our feeling was, based on what we had and the magnitude of the job, you're looking at a 2 to 3 month job, we figured, which put us into dollars that we can reach. So all that to say, to stay in the budget of $50,091, the report in front of you recommends that we purchase Stone Orchard and that an upset value of $11,250 be established for the contracting or hiring of a part-time person to populate that data. And that basically would put us in a position where we had properly maintained and protected cemetery data that we could build on as we move forward.
Deputy Reeve,
I'll make an motion.
okay,
Comment. I would just like to reiterate what I said earlier about this. I think that it's important to look at this data, not just as a means of placing a grave or selecting a plot or whatever, but looking at it as a resource to deal with genealogy searches by people. When you think about it, there are millions of people out there in the world who have some possible connection with some possible parts of Huron County and may at some point want to look up something. And I think providing that kind of resource is extremely important. It's an economic development engine, really, and I think it's in the implementation. Think about that term, making that information readily available at the counter if possible when people drop in.
okay. Anything further, Sean?
No, I don't think so.
Any other further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thanks, Sean. Okay. Blythe Memorial Hall topiary placement request.
Thank you, Reeve. As council may recall, we had the BIA from Blythe come and make a presentation back, I believe it was the May 7th council meeting. At that point, they talked about this topiary, and basically what it is it's a statue that would sit in the corner of the property, we'll say the northeast corner of the property, right near the sidewalk by the building that's currently under renovation, in the grassy area. It's a frame of a man and a woman in formal wear. The steel frame would be wrapped in plants. So throughout the growing season, there'd be live plants. In the fall, there would be fall type plants interwoven through it. Winter, there might be arts and crafts like different materials, felts, wools, that sort of thing on it. And they're to look like a traditional older man and woman walking down the street there was a hole in the head so that you could stick your face through it and have a selfie taken if you so chose. It took a while to get here because we went through 1419. We made sure that this pickup Posey that was proposing it had a maintenance agreement with 1419, which is in place. We had to talk about insurance because it is on municipal property. Donna was able to talk to our insurance carriers and they didn't have any concerns over it. We had to make sure that it was going to be properly installed. They gave us assurances that it would be installed by a licensed contractor. And then the agreement that's actually included in the package also takes care of ongoing maintenance and the disposition should the current agreement between the municipality and 1419 cease to exist or it fall into disrepair. So I think after all of that, it was a fairly straightforward request, and if approved, they were going to proceed with the construction this fall. I understand.
Let me move.
Councillor Vaughn moves. Councillor Stewart seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, moving to 6.4.4, Union Gas easement request.
Thank you, Reed Vincent. As we discussed in the last meeting, Union Gas had requested an easement to the north of the Maitland River Community Church to run a gas line to that landlocked property. They had it restate to confirm location. Everything is as it should be in terms of the proper parcel designations. I talked to them a few times regarding it. There was some concern over the size of service and maybe availability or need for others. They confirmed with their GIS that everybody else in the area has been serviced, although they are running larger than usual line into there because of the distance, so that would allow some growth and expansion. But really, there's no, we couldn't identify any concerns. It'll go through under that parking lot. The access parking lot to the rail bridge, basically just to the north of that bunch of trees that was planted by the community church.
You're moving,
So moved.
and Deputy Reeves seconded. Okay, is there any further discussion on that point? All in favor? Carried. Okay, and 6.4.5, service line warranties.
Thank you, Reeve. This is an interesting one, and in all fairness, it's one that I dealt with just before coming to North Huron. Service Line Warranties is a company that won a procurement through the city of Hamilton to provide warranty service for the physical asset of private sewer lines, private water lines, and privately owned plumbing in residential locations. After Hamilton brought it in, LAS and AMO took a lot of interest in it, took and vetted their procurement policy and adopted service line warranties basically as a vendor of record for the province. What this firm is doing is they're approaching municipalities, and as I said, I dealt with them up north when I was just before coming here. They approach a municipality and request a partnership with that municipality. The reason they do that is they want the municipality's endorsement, letterhead, and mail-out list. Basically, then every resident of, say, North Huron in this case, would receive a letter from Service Line Warranties with the North Huron logo. It establishes credibility with the company, and what they're doing is then they're selling a warranty. It's not insurance, it's a warranty on those assets. Specifically what we're talking about is, let's look at the sewer line, for example. From the property line out to the lateral, that's North Huron's concern. From the property line to the house is the homeowner's concern. If you're in a situation where you're in an older area of town or you have large trees on your property that gets taken over by roots, you get a backup. Right now, what happens is the municipality gets the call. my sewer backed up. So we end up sending a plumber, having them in, they look, determine whether the obstruction's on the private or the municipal side, and then we move forward from there. Service line warranties sells, and the prices are in here, it's actually not very expensive, but they sell the warranty on the asset. So that could be a blocked sewer for any reason, frozen water line, a broken water line, or the interior plumbing problem. They become the first line of contact. So if you have a problem, you call service line warranties, they bring in a plumber, they deal with it if it's private side, they call us if it's the municipal side. Which is why, from a public works perspective, it's advantageous because it allows us to give some sort of recourse. The concern is that to the average citizen, if you got a sewer obstruction, you can be $3,000 to $4,000 as soon as you pick up the phone. They cover, I believe it's up to $8,000 for sewer and $5,000 for water lines. Plus, I'm not sure what to be honest, what they cover on inside plumbing. The real issue is that they need the municipality's endorsement to be able to sell the product effectively. I had asked them when I met with them previously, and he explained that it's like any other mass mailout. You know, if you see it and it's too occupant, it gets thrown over the shoulder because you don't know whether it's real or not. If it comes on North Huron letterhead, then first off, they open it. Second off, it has some credibility associated with it because it's been vetted through a process. What else to tell you about it? Really, what they look at for is this contractual agreement with the municipality. There's no cost associated to the municipality. In point of fact, they give councils an option. They can either take a 5% royalty on every sale, or they can rebate that royalty back to the, like if the township wanted it but said we don't want the 5%, that 5% reduction goes to anybody who purchases the service. And one other point, I did talk to an insurance company. I only talked to one, obviously, and just asked if this was infringing on something that they would be a service that they would offer, and the answer was no. The insurance company basically, they don't cover an asset, they cover an event. So if the sewer plugged, the insurance company is dealing with the flooding issues and all that based on your policy. Service line warranties is actually saying, okay, we'll fix the asset.
Deputy Reeve?
Just a question we didn't ask, where's this company out of? Like I'm thinking of service, if they have to have service here in Wingham,
Right.
how quick does the service come?
I believe originally the company was in the States. They have an office out of Toronto now. And what they do is they establish local contractors. I think we've got some neighboring communities in this immediate area. In Saugeen Shores, Elliott Lake, of course, Goderich, Meaford, Grey Highlands. They've all signed on to this. But what they do is then they establish local contractors. So that and that was part of their whole pitch, is that we're not going to have a pool of people in Peel that are going to come out when they get to you. They establish the pool of workers.
Councillor Syke.
I will move.
Okay.
No, sorry.
Okay.
Just a minute. Do you have a question?
Councillor Stewart.
Oh, okay.
I just had a couple of quick questions there. First of all, I just want to confirm that this is completely optional to the property owner. And secondly, that I hope there's no high pressure sales pitch for people that have to buy this from the companies.
No, thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Completely optional, and that's why I attached the letter, a copy of the letter. I took the municipality that this came from in the area, and I changed the logo just for privacy's sake. But this is all that they would see is this letter. It goes out, makes the offer, and they find that this business model seems to get a better response, but it is an entirely optional letter.
One other question. In your experience, it says that they are the first contact because our logo is on it, and as would any other municipality that authorized it. is there a certain percentage that would be calling our public works rather than calling them?
Yes, and that's, I suppose, to be expected. Over time, you would educate the general public, but it's easy enough to handle. And the beauty of it is that if we went this route, we have the option of putting their phone number on, on the website or on a recording, that sort of thing. So we would just redirect.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, thanks, Sean. Moving to 6.7.1. And that's to Dwayne. That is a sublease with Huron County.
Thanks, Reed. So this report was prepared by Manager of Child Care Services, who's unable to be here tonight, so I'm presenting it in her behalf. So the Children's Services Center uses 2 rooms at the Sacred Heart School. And in those 2 rooms, we provide the Early On program, the Growing Together program, and we also use one of the classrooms for a licensed child care center. In the past, we've had an agreement for the use of those 2 rooms with the school board. That lease or arrangement expired, and the school board came to us earlier this year and indicated they wish to renew that. The county is involved in our child care services, and to allow us time to organize and prepare, the county graciously stepped in and entered into a lease agreement with the school board to allow us to continue to use those 2 classrooms. But in doing so, the county's indicated to us that they would like us essentially to assume, the responsibility for those 2 classrooms in the form of a sublease from the county. The cost per month per room ranges from anywhere from $648 to $653. This was not a budgeted cost in our 2018 budget. However, staff have reviewed our 2018 budget, and it is possible for us to absorb this cost for the balance of 2018, and then it'll be taken into consideration as we move forward for our 2019 budget. So we're seeking council approval to enter into the sublease agreement with the county.
Do I have a mover? Councillor Vodden. Deputy Reeve Campbell seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. And 6.8.1, Rural Economic Development Grant Application. Wayne?
Thanks, Reed. So our last council meeting, as council is aware, OMAFRA has issued requests for applications for the Rural Economic Development Program. And there was discussion at the last council meeting in terms of putting in a funding application. This was discussed by the Economic Development Committee. And it was noted that over the last few years, there's been a lot of discussion and consistent messaging from both township staff and the community that things like the township website have been difficult to navigate, and that there's a lack of marketing material promoting the municipality, and information regarding community special events is often difficult to find. And that's something that there were some community workshops some council members may have had the opportunity to attend, which was a consistent message that we heard. So essentially, we have put together an application that basically is asking for some funding. The total project is in the amount of $32,000. OMAFRA funds up to 50% of those costs. So on the basis that the project would be approved, at $32,000, and we're asking for half of that, $16,000, to be funded from the Economic Development Program. In terms of the project itself, it would involve website design, training, and IT support, showcase displays, developing a North Huron brochure, establishing display boards, developing 3 North Huron videos, and we've also included some money in there for printing costs. So if council is supportive, staff will proceed with the application. The application is due on September the 28th. So we will proceed quickly.
Okay, Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga, Councillor Sipes seconding. Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay, 6.8.2, traditional land acknowledgement statement. Dwayne?
Thanks, Reed. So earlier this year, there was a document called Guidance on Traditional Land Acknowledgement Statements that was circulated by AMO, encouraging municipalities to consider the development of a traditional land acknowledgement statement. Council received that correspondence and directed staff to investigate and report back on appropriate traditional land acknowledgement statements. Staff has undertaken that research. In terms of the material itself, in terms of the tips, in terms of the development of the statement, it indicates and speaks to researching history of the land, of the area to which the statement would apply, engaging and working with local First Nations communities, Métis, Indigenous organizations, developing a statement, and reaching out to First Nations communities to get their input and their feedback on it to make sure that it is acceptable to them. So staff have undertaken some research in terms of what Indigenous communities would we be working with. The Kettle Point Nation and the Saugeen First Nation are the two that specifically that would be relevant to this area. In terms of, as part of our research, we did find some examples of organizations that have developed this in communities, one being the Blythe Festival. I'm sure for any of you who have attended the Blythe Festival, you often hear Gil, for example, who will, and it's a statement that was developed in consultation with the First Nation communities. City of Guelph has also undertaken the development of a statement, and the province has a statement themselves. But every statement is unique based on the area to which it's going to apply. The Blythe staff basically have indicated that they have gone through the process themselves. They have offered to assist us and provide us with guidance in terms of moving forward with it. It is fairly involved in terms of researching and speaking with First Nation communities. In terms of speaking with First Nation communities, you would work with the elders, and elders equate basically to the leaders of the First Nation communities, which in our case, for example, would be your staff and would be your counselors. So it's recommended in terms of when we do meet with or consult with the First Nation communities, as you see in the report, it's recommended that either the REEV or perhaps a REEV designate work with staff to work with the First Nation communities in the development of that statement. So just in terms of moving forward, essentially we would work with folks such as the Blythe Festival who have gone through the process, learn from their experience, seek their guidance, and develop a draft statement that we would then take to the two respective First Nation communities, and we work together and come up with something that worked for them and worked for us, and then we would subsequently bring that back to council for approval.
Move approval.
There's two options here. I would like to hear
Separate. Yeah, sorry.
and then for the motion, choose an option.
Okay, sorry, I didn't notice that.
Okay,
Also, any questions?
well, there is the option two,
Oh, yes.
which is fairly self-explanatory. Okay, if there's no discussion on the second option, Do we have a motion? Councillor Lund,
Absolutely.
move option one.
Option one, yeah.
Okay,
I'll second that.
discussion? Okay, do you
Uh,
have anything you
I,
want to
I
add?
would like to volunteer to work on this if council is agreeable,
Okay.
as required.
There's one thing that I would probably personally lean towards Kettle Point, because that is where Chief Walwanash that signed the treaty ended his days that he moved south. These lands were primarily used as hunting and fishing and gathering lands, and that I know the indigenous peoples right up to approximately 100 years ago and a little less had free reign to come and harvest Canadian ginseng in the township of East Wawanosh. It was one of the things that was accepted at that time, so that in that I would see that we do definitely have a link with the Kettle Point band. Are we ready for the motion?
But
Go ahead.
Another question, are you suggesting that we exclude Saugeen? Or deal with them separately, or?
Do they have any history that they were related to this particular area?
I believe they have, but I'm not sure, I'm not a scholar in it.
That I think we would check with them.
Yeah.
That we can document a connection to the Kettle Point band.
And if you do that, that's fine, I don't want to push myself in
there. That we are ready for the motion that is printed as option one. All those in favor? Okay. Do you want to make a motion appointing person to work with staff?
I'll make the motion that Brock be this source, Council Warren.
Okay. And you're second?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a question, how quickly are we moving on this? Is this something that'll be done, or at least commenced during this term of council, or is this something that is further down the road? I'm just not sure of the time frame. I guess I'm maybe through you to Dwayne, is this something that can be commenced fairly quickly, or?
You, Reeve, the plan would be that we would undertake to move quickly in terms of the Blythe vessel, for example. They've gone through the process, so we would look to them to help us through that process, and presumably we'd be able to move through the process, following their lead. So I envision we'd be able to proceed very quickly.
Councillor Hallahan?
That's within this term of office. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm just, stop me if I'm outside of my legal boundaries here, but I'm wondering if I can make a friendly amendment to it, that if for some reason we don't conclude this during this term of council, that Councillor Bodden or then Citizen Bodden be allowed to continue with the group. That's, it may not necessarily be a counselor that concludes the proceedings here, depending how long it takes. I'm not sure if you understand what I'm getting at.
Okay. You're just wanting that put in case it is
Yeah, I just don't want
concluded.
to, I just don't want to see come December the 1st and they say, like, okay, we're not done our work. So we're sorry, thanks for what you've done, but you're out and somebody else is in. I'd like to see that person work through to the conclusion.
I would think it would be desirable that you continue to have a member of council involved in it, but I would be agreeable to voluntarily tag along and do anything that I could, because I think it's extremely important.
You've got the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. And 7.1 is Blythe BIA Street Parade, Saturday, December 1st, 2018, in conjunction with Hometown Holiday Weekend. Note time should be 2 to 3 p.m. And that is for a street closing for 1 hour to allow a parade in conjunction with Hometown Holiday Weekend in Blythe. You're
So
moving,
moved.
right?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart seconds. That's good.
I just want to make sure that it is going to be forwarded on to the county for their approval, because it is a county road that they're looking to close.
Yeah, basically, EMS, Public Works, Fire Department, and Police are the ones we usually have notified in that type of an instance.
But wouldn't the county need to approve it as well, because it's a county road?
Well, in the it would be county public works as well as our own. But I thought that was inferred in because county, being a county road, it would be county that would be notified.
We've always dealt with
Yeah,
county roads.
there's the ones that we, for county road temporary closure, there's the list that we always notify. All in favor of that? Carried. Council reports. The Reeves activity report. There's a number of things going on. I have 7 municipal meetings before Friday night, so that is maybe why my campaign is not getting all the signs up as yet, but no, it's a number of things from County Facilities Committee to economic development, both in North Huron's sphere as well as in the county sphere. So that's a little bit of what I'm doing this week. I will open it up to council members for verbal reports if they have anything from boards and committees. Councillor Syke?
I'm not really sure where it fits on it's not really a committee, but there has been a lot of a lot of dialogue in the news about ransom things with regards to the municipalities, where people hold a server of a municipality. The town of the Midland is a prime example where they've been put under ransom to, they can't access any of their computer software, their computer data, and they've lost it for like 2 weeks, and they were required to, if they wanted it back, to get $70,000 or $80,000 in order to do that. I guess my question is, does our insurance policy have stuff in that as it relates to that type of stuff?
Donna, as to what you know.
Yeah, just what I know of, from that comment is that, so as you know, we've just been through our insurance RFP and did not have the cyber insurance before, so our policy won't kick in until January 1st with our new policy. So we have had discussions at SMT, we've had discussions with our new computer, continue at our new computer company, I guess, that provides us service. So definitely staff are aware of it. It has been talked about at a lot of municipal meetings and such, so it certainly is a big concern right now, for sure.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, I just want to see if there was some discussion had at SMT. That's good. Thank you.
This was probably the best point. Good. Okay. Is there anything else from council members?
Just one thing, I was at the Belgrade School Fair for the opening ceremonies on behalf of the league. Great to see all those kids there. There was over 600 kids there last Wednesday.
Okay. We will move to bylaws now. Bylaw number 80, 2018. You read it or one of our?
Bylaw number 80, 2018, being a bylaw to adopt and maintain a procurement policy for the Township of North Huron, be introduced, read at first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Vauden and Deputy Reeve Campbell. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 81, 2018. Being a bylaw to establish a joint municipal election compliance audit committee for the 2018 municipal election and to appoint members to that committee. Barb?
Bylaw number 81, 2018, being a bylaw to establish a joint municipal election compliance audit committee for the 2018 municipal election and to appoint members to that committee, be introduced, read at first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve and clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Sipe, Councillor Stewart. All in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 82, 2018, being a bylaw to authorize the Reeve and clerk to sign on behalf of council an easement agreement between the Corporation of the Township of North Huron and Union Gas Limited for an easement for the purposes of a hydrocarbon line on lands described as part of Lot 10, Park Lot 10, Registered Plan 410, designated as Part 4 on 22R-3903, save and accept Part 1 on 22R-4107, Township of North Huron.
I'll move first, second, third.
Okay.
I'll save Barb.
I will take that. And Councillor Vauden seconds. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 83, 2018, being a bylaw to authorize the Reeve and clerk to sign on behalf of council a sublease agreement with the Corporation of the County of Huron and the Corporation of the Township of North Huron for North Huron Children's Program located at 255 Hornan Street, Wingham.
Be introduced, read at first, second, third, and final time, be signed by the Reeve and clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Ritzman-Dedinga and Councillor Vauden, all in favor? Carried. Okay, announcements. 11.1. Doing that, Dwayne?
Sure. So just as a reminder, Town Hall public meeting has been scheduled for September 24th, a week tonight at 7 o'clock in the Town Hall Theater in this building upstairs.
Okay. And 11.2.
And again, a reminder that the all candidates meetings are scheduled for September the 26th at 7 o'clock at the Wingham Legion and October the 9th at 7 o'clock at the Blythe Memorial Hall. I encourage everyone to attend.
Councillor Stewart?
Just a question on the public meeting. Is council being expected to make any kind of presentation at the night, like each individual councillor, or I'm just not sure of the format that we're to follow on that evening?
Go ahead.
That there can be, a person can have up to 5 minutes to question things that council does. There's the possibility of a number of questions that we may not be able to answer being asked. And that's to be expected if it is still an in-camera subject, that there's no public things on it, or a court case that is still in progress that we cannot comment on. We might get asked why certain sidewalks might be plowed and other ones not. The questions can come from almost any place. We answer what we can. If you're not sure that you're new enough that I don't think you will get any questions directed to you, but Councillor Syke?
What I would say, because we have had 2 of these, there is a list of questions that have been presented. I think though it would be pervious to send those questions and the responses that were given or not given out to council, so that if the question comes up again, we can reiterate the comment that we given or we talked about or whatever. I think that would be one good information for Councillor Stewart, the fact that he's coming into this as cold as anybody. And I think you're right, Reed. Most of the time it's not going to be directed at one councillor. Generally, most of these things get directed at the Reeve. About that, and that tends to be the case. However, I think if we got that information that of what topics have been brought up in the past, it might help us to re-inform ourselves about responses that we've used or difficult conversations that we've had, so that, you know, those are the types of questions that we're going to have probably come up.
I guess, and I don't have a problem with the questions, I just wasn't sure if each councillor was to make a presentation on some of the committees they've sat on throughout the year. Okay, that's.
Unless you have to.
Mine's easy. And I do have a couple of announcements once we're finished.
Okay. Well, wonder upon wonder, we don't have a closed to the public session tonight. So we will take your concerns now, John.
They're not concerns, they're just announcements I want to
Okay.
make. And you've heard the old saying, there's good news and there's bad news. I'm going to start with the bad news. On September the 20th, the Blythe branch of the CIBC will be closing its doors. CIBC website claims that the CIBC has operations in Canada, the United States, Asia, and Europe. 2017, the CIBC had $16.28 million in revenue. and has assets totaling $565.26 billion. What the website does not say is that the CIBC has no interest in continuing operations in small and rural communities. I wish to recognize the present employees as well as all past employees of the Blythe branch for their dedication and service to our community. I hope that another financial institution will recognize a vibrant community with unlimited growth potential and choose to locate in Blythe. And to the good news. The Here at Pioneer Thrashers and Hobby Association recently completed its 57th successful event. Now, the Blythe Festival will be completing their 44th season this coming weekend. These organizations could not function without the unselfish work of the volunteers from our area. I wish to congratulate both organizations for their successes and sincerely thank the residents of our area who donated hundreds of hours of their free time to assure successful undertakings. And finally, Blythe will welcome the Festival of Wizardry from September the 21st to the 23rd. Over the 3 days, the event will bring thousands of visitors to our community. The last number I've heard was about 13,000 tickets sold, who in turn will support our local businesses and community organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those 3 notifications. And yes, by all means, we don't say thank you often enough to our volunteers. So thank you for doing it and bringing those points forward. Okay. Is there anything else before a confirmatory bylaw? Okay. Bylaw number 84, 2018, being a bylaw of the Township of Northford to confirm general previous actions of the Council of the Township of Northford. Councillor Vodden, Councillor Sype, all in favor? Carried. Okay. An adjournment motion. Councillor Hallahan, Councillor Stewart, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. We're done.